So continuing with our Alienware month, I'm back finally with the Alienware M16 review. Now I have already reviewed the X16 and the Alienware M18, and I will put the links in the description below in case you missed those reviews. But finally we've got the 16-inch mid-range laptop from Alienware, the Alienware M16. So this M16 is Alienware's mid-range laptop. Now we've already looked at the Alienware X16, which is their more premium range, and this M series is slightly bigger than the X16 and loses out on a couple of the features. But this year, Alienware have massively improved their M series range of laptops, and this M16 is a big upgrade over last year's M15R7. So we're going to take a start and have a look around this laptop, and I'm going to tell you about some of the changes. So this year we've moved to a 16-inch laptop instead of last year's M15, which is a 15.6 inch. So we've got a very slightly bigger screen on this year's model, and it's also a 16:10 aspect ratio, which is something that I really do like on my laptops. But the biggest thing with the Alienware M16 over last year's M series range is the build quality has massively improved now. When I pick up this M16 laptop, and it's quite a big and chunky laptop, it is a gaming powerhouse, but this one is now feeling absolutely rock solid, whereas the M15R7, I wasn't overly impressed with the build quality. Now you got sort of the metal top, full metal bottom, with a nice foot that goes right the way around the laptop, making it nice and solid on your desk. Opening the hinge is nice and sturdy, and everything just feels great. There's no creak, there's no flex. You can pick it up anywhere, and there's no creak. And that's something I do like when I'm paying this much for a laptop. Now, with regards to the colors, it only comes in the dark side of the moon, which is basically this black vent with the sort of the gunmetal sort of gray finish. And I personally think it looks fantastic. And this is probably one of my favorite color Alienwares anyway. Now, with regards to the specs of these laptops, I've actually got in the base model. I've already tested the i9 and the 4090 on the M18, so I wanted to see how well the 4060 model does with the i7 13700HX. Now this i7 13700HX CPU is a 16-core chip, so that's 8 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores. So you're going to get fantastic performance even with the base model CPU. But you can still put in the i9, and you can also have the 4060, 4070, 4080 and 4090 GPUs in this chassis. So if you're looking for a more portable machine than the M18 with massive amounts of power, this is still a really good option. Now, as of filming this review, they have actually just launched a Ryzen version as well, and there's 2 Ryzen chips coming out from this year's Ryzen range, and we will be getting those in soon, so please make sure you're subscribed if you want to see an update on the Ryzen version as we get hold of it. But for now, we're going to be looking at the Intel version with the i7 and that 4060. Now, with regards to the size and the weight, this is quite a heavy laptop. It is a 6-inch laptop, so expect it to be heavier than a 15-inch laptop, obviously, but this does feel like a 17-inch laptop here. And also, because we've got the grills at the back, which protrude out the back of the laptop, it does make it a lot deeper than a normal 6-inch laptop as well, meaning that it's not going to fit in compact 15-inch bags, and you're going to probably need to buy at least a 7-inch laptop bag for this to slide in nicely. But it's still reasonably portable, and it's certainly, you say, I can pick it up with one hand, no problem. So I certainly think you could buy this and certainly take it to college and use it without too much of an issue. So before I open this laptop up and we take a quick look at the screen and the keyboard, I want to just quickly mention the ports whilst we've got this laptop closed. Now, the thing I like about the M series range over the Alienware X series, the X series is a more premium laptop and it does look beautiful, but all the ports are on the rear. And although it looks great when everything's plugged in and hanging out the back, it's not practical when you're using your laptop day in, day out. With this M16, see on the left side, we've got a headset jack and a USB-A port and an RJ45 port. And then the rest of the ports are all on the rear, and that is your power jack, a full-size SD card slot, a mini display port, an HDMI 2.1, another USB-A, and 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. So we have got a great selection of ports. Personally, I would have preferred 3 USB-A ports, and as with the M18, why on earth did they put the full-size SD card slot on the back and an RJ45 on the side? They should have swapped those over. It's such a silly decision. But at least we've got those ports on here. Now, when it comes to being an Alienware, we've got plenty of RGB on this laptop. Now, this is one area where you lose some of the features over that X series. You don't get the mini LED Tron ring, but we do still get the rear RGB Alienware head, which you can change the colors and the effects in the Alienware Command Center. And we've got the single zone Tron ring that goes right the way around the edge of the back end of the laptop. And even though it isn't the mini LED with countless different colors on, it still does look fantastic. As I move the laptop round, and as we look inside, you can see we've got the Alien head, which you can change the colors on this. But this power button shows yellow by default when it's on battery and blue when it's on mains. And when it's charging, it oscillates between yellow and blue. And that's something I do love with these Alienwares. You know whether you're on power or main. It's quite a handy little feature. And then we've got the per key RGB keyboard. Now, talking about the keyboard, I've opted for the scissor switch keyboard. You can also customize it and choose the Cherry MX Blue keyboard, which is a clicky mechanical switch. It is fantastic, but it can be a little bit loud. The scissor switch one also feels amazing, but is a very quiet press. So it's totally up to you whether you want a sort of a loud clicky keyboard, like a mechanical keyboard, or just a standard keyboard with just a very quiet, sort of, still very tactile response. And even the standard keyboard on this Alienware feels absolutely fantastic. And I do love the typing experience on every Alienware laptop. But something I'm not quite so fond of is the touchpad. As you can see, it's only a sort of reasonable sized touchpad. It feels okay, it glides okay. It's a little bit clunky if I'm honest, having used more premium touchpads like on the X16 or Razer blades. But considering this is their more mid-range line, I can kind of put up with it. And being honest, it does what I need it to do. And being a gaming laptop, I've usually got a gaming mouse plugged in anyway. And the palm rest is a soft touch finish. And yes, it does attract some fingerprints, but I have to be honest, it's quite luxurious feeling. And I love using this and put my hands on this soft touch coating when I'm using this laptop. Above the keyboard, unfortunately that's not a speaker grill, that's air intake for the fan systems on this laptop. The speakers are down firing and they sound like this. Speaker test of the Alienware M16 at 50% volume. Now 80%. Now, they're not bad for gaming laptop speakers. They're certainly not going to blow you away. They are lacking a bit of bass, but you know, for game sounds and podcasts, I really don't think they're bad at all. And as we move up to the screen, I've chosen the default QHD 165Hz panel. Now, this is still a very good panel. I was a bit worried when I bought the default one because obviously they do offer a 240Hz version as well. We have tested them both. Now, if you upgrade to the 240Hz version, you also get the Windows IR facial recognition. And I would personally choose that one just for the Windows Hello logging in. But this model it saves you a few pounds and it's still a great panel to game on. But personally, I would configure this up to the 240Hz version. Now the third option is a 1200p 480Hz. It's like an eSports panel. And yes, it's going to be a very fast panel at 480Hz. But to be fair, you're probably never going to be driving games, or not many games, at 480Hz on a laptop. And also, you're going to start seeing the sort of the pixels on a 1200p panel on a 16-inch laptop. So unless you really want that incredibly fast response time of a 480Hz for I don't know, maybe an Overwatch or a Counter-Strike Go, I wouldn't recommend that panel. So then above the screen, we've got the webcam. It looks and sounds like this. This is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the Alienware M16. And before we get to the performance section, I do want to just open the bottom of this laptop up and we'll take a quick look inside. Now, opening this laptop is relatively straightforward. You undo 8 screws. The front 2 screws closest to the edge of the laptop, they actually prise the panel away from the laptop itself, and that's really quite handy, but it is very tight. You're going to need a pry tool just to run it along the front edge so you can lift it up and away from the machine. But now with the base plate removed, you can see we've got access to the main components of the laptop. Now, firstly, we've got 2 RAM slots which are upgradable, and that's something I like to see. The X series, which is the more premium laptop, had its RAM soldered on. This one has 2 DDR5 4800MHz DIMM slots. Now, I've got mine configured with 16 gigabytes, but this is very easily upgradable, and you can upgrade it with faster RAM as well. I've already released a video on how to upgrade these laptops, and I put in 64 gigabytes of a 5200MHz kit in this machine, which worked perfectly. I'm going to put a link in the description to that video just in case you want to see that, but it's well worth doing. You can save yourself a fortune and get faster RAM by upgrading it yourself. Now, if you buy the 4060 or the 4070 version of this laptop, it comes with 2 80mm Gen 4 SSD slots. As you can see here with my 4060, I've got just the 2 slots side by side for upgrading the actual storage of this machine. But if you buy the 4080 or the 4090 version, you get another 2 30mm M.2 slots. Now again, in my previous upgrade video, I actually put in 2 1TB drives into the 30mm slots on the 4090 version of these Alienwares. So if storage is absolutely premium to you, you may well have to upgrade to that 4080 just to get those extra 2 slots. and there was no reason for Dell to take those two slots away for the 4060 and 4070 version. That's just pure greed on Dell's behalf, trying to force you up to the 4080 if you want those extra slots. Another good thing is that the Wi-Fi card is socketed. It also has a heatsink on, so you can upgrade that in the future if you wish. And you'll notice it's got a strange fan setup with this laptop. We've got two large fans that pump the hot air out the rear and the side of the machine. We've got another one that pumps hot air out of the side for the GPU. And lastly, we've got a tiny little fan that blows cool air over the RAM chips, keeping your RAM and your chipsets cool. So it's really nice that despite being the mid-range series of laptops, they have gone above and beyond on the cooling system, in my opinion, on this machine. Now the downside, although it has a vapor chamber and the Element 31 thermal compound, the motherboard is inverted, which means if you want to repaste this laptop, you do need to take the entire laptop apart to get the motherboard out to get to that heatsink. Now that is a real shame because very often these will come with not the best application on the thermal paste. You'll want to redo it yourself and you have to strip this entire laptop down. But anyway, with that cooling system in mind, let's put this back together and start looking at the performance. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I've chosen the i7 13700 HX CPU in this laptop. This is the base model when I bought it. And this has 8 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores on this CPU, giving it very, very good performance for the base model. And it actually performs way better than last year's i9 on the Alienware X17R2. Running Cinebench R23, which is a 10-minute long stress test, which really hammers this CPU, we scored over 20,000 points on all of the profiles on this laptop. That's really quite impressive. Our Alienware X17R2 in its boost mode with the i9 last year only scored about 18,000. Running the Geekbench 5 CPU test, which is a shorter benchmark but does single core and multi-core, gave very strong results on this M16 base model. And if you want even more performance, then you can get the i9 version of this, which can score about 50% higher in the multi-threaded benchmarks. Now moving on to the GPU section with this 4060, we've got a 110 watt card in here, so obviously less wattage than the 4080 and 4090 versions, but still more than adequate for this 4060 to give very, very strong performance. Now when we ran the synthetic benchmarks, this was scoring pretty much on par with the 3070 Ti, so really impressive results for an entry-level card with this 4060. And then running through some actual games on this machine, the game's benchmarks all performed very well at both 1080p and its default 1600p resolution. And when I actually put some games through this machine, I found most of the games were more than playable at its 2560 by 1600 with a good 100 odd frames per second. Now you will probably need to sort of tweak some settings down on those sort of AAA titles to keep the frame rates up if you do like a sort of 100 plus frames per second like I do when I'm doing sort of competitive gaming. But this is an entry-level card and it is giving very, very strong performance. And if you're an esport player or somebody that only has light use, then this 4060 is going to be all you ever need. I wouldn't even consider looking at something stronger. And the advantage of having such a low-powered card is that no matter what profile I'm running this on, I'm getting excellent results. So if I'm running this on balanced mode, I'm getting pretty much the same performance as if I'm running on the very noisy overdrive mode. Now when I had the M18 with the 4090, I needed to use the overdrive mode with max fans to get the maximum performance out of it. But with this M16 with the 4060, just the balance mode gives you the maximum performance out of this 4060, and it still does incredibly well. And although the internal temperatures can get a little bit toasty, because as always with Dell, they do let the CPU run up to 100 degrees, so it will boost as much as it can up to 100, then it starts throttling the chip back. Now if you don't like that, you can adjust it in the BIOS and you can change the TCC down to make the throttle point come down a little bit earlier. But personally, I have no problems with the CPU hitting 100 degrees to get the maximum performance out of it. And although those internal temperatures can get quite hot, the external temperatures are absolutely fantastic. As with all the other Alienwares we've reviewed this year, the palm rest and the keyboard stay incredibly cool to the touch, and even the longest, most demanding gaming session. So when I'm playing like a 3 or 4 hour session on Warzone, I can keep my hand on the palm rest and my WSD keys, and it does not heat up. There's nothing worse than buying a thin gaming laptop like maybe a Razer Blade that after a bit of prolonged gaming, the WSD keys are scorching and burning your fingers, making it an uncomfortable experience. With this Alienware, it does remain nice and cool. Now moving over to performance on battery with this laptop, and as with all the other Intel models we've tested, the performance has been great. In its balance mode, it was a little bit sluggish, but when you put it up to the sort of the higher performance mode on battery, you get some fantastic performance out of these components. Now battery life was very disappointing though. Now despite this having an 86 watt hour battery and having a smaller screen than the M18, in our battery test, streaming YouTube over Wi-Fi at 200 nits of brightness, this laptop only got 3 hours and 50 minutes of battery life, which is poor, but actually 10 minutes less than the much bigger M18. Now that surprised me because I was expecting to get much better battery out of this laptop. And another feature that's missing from the M series range is there's no PD charging with this laptop. So whereas with a lot of other laptops, if you forget your charger or if you're just working in the office, you can use a 100-watt USB-C charger or a power bank to keep yourself going. No such luck with the M series range. I've tested the Thunderbolt ports and they do not accept a charge. So that does mean you're going to need to take your power supply with you. Now, despite me only having a 4060 and an i7 processor, you still get the 330-watt Dell power pack. Now in the UK, I got the slim power pack, but I have heard in other countries you're still getting the old-fashioned brick. Now I have to be honest, if you get the new 330-watt slim GAN charger, it's a great charger. It will slip easily in your bag. You won't even notice you've got a massive 330-watt pack in there. But if you're unfortunate enough to get the 330-watt brick, that thing is big, heavy, and a monstrosity. So it's unfortunate. I don't know which countries are getting which power packs yet. I thought everyone was going to be getting the slim ones, but plenty of users have messaged in to say that they have had the brick. Okay, so before I move on to the conclusion, I want to just quickly talk about the Alienware Command Center. Now, I'm not going to labour this point because I have talked about this plenty of times on the previous two laptops, but just in case you haven't watched those reviews, this year we've got a new version of Alienware Command Center. Apparently Dell have rewritten this software to totally improve it and bring it forward into 2023, but so far I've been nothing but disappointed with their new Alienware Command Center. It's got a new user interface, but it's actually got less functionality than last year's Alienware Command Center. It's unintuitive, and it's got a couple of annoying bugs. Firstly, whenever you're gaming, it picks up your game's profile, and that can be useful. It can be very useful that you can set a different performance profile for each game, but there's no way to override that. So if you've put in sort of new game, or if you've forgotten which game's got what profile, you can have one profile on overdrive, and you can fire it up, and it can be incredibly noisy, and you've got to go back into Alienware Command Center and change it again. I want to be able to have a way of overriding that and just having a global setting of just maybe, I don't know, the balanced power profile for everything. So if you want a quiet laptop for an office, you can just leave it on balance. It doesn't matter what you run with it changing itself. Now, secondly, this is an HX CPU in this machine, which should be completely unlocked to allow undervolting. Now, unfortunately, Dell have it locked down that you cannot use Intel XTU or throttle stop out of the box, or at least I haven't been able to. And you should be able to use Alienware Command Center to tweak the CPU. But as of the moment, even with the latest BIOS, that's still really wonky. And although you can put it in on the BIOS and put an actual undervolt in on the BIOS, it's not fully customizable. I can't adjust all the multipliers, and certain profiles do seem to override that undervolt. Now, I'm hoping this is just because it's early days and it's a few teething problems. I really do hope that Alienware improve this software over the coming few months, and I will revisit it soon and let you know, because personally, I think for such a great piece of hardware, at the moment it's let down by this piece of software. So that leads me into the conclusion. And I've spent a fair amount of time now with this Alienware M16, and I do think this is a fantastic notebook. Now, yes, they're very expensive this year, but then I think most of these 4000 series notebooks are expensive. But they're a big step up from last year's M15 range or M17 range, which I found really quite average for the Alienware brand. This year they've come back out with a much more solid chassis. It's quite chunky and it's quite heavy, but it's a great unit. Now, this M16 is still reasonably portable. It may not fit in a 15-inch bag because of this extra grille width at the back, but it will fit in a 17-inch bag. And you've got an amazing amount of power with this 13th gen CPU and this 4000 series GPU that you can configure in this laptop. You've got that amazing Anywhere keyboard. You've got a great 16-inch QHD screen. Now, admittedly, it is only just over 300 nits of brightness, which is a bit of a shame because some of the competitors have moved up to 500 nits. But unfortunately, all of Alienware's at the moment are only 300 nits. So if you're buying Anywhere, that is something you're going to have to just deal with. But it is still a good quality screen. So if you're gaming and it's not that bright environment, you'll still have a great time. And the fact that this laptop stays so incredibly cool does make it a great gaming experience device. So I think personally, if you can get a good discount coupon and you get this at a good price, I think this is a really good buy this year. But I don't think I would be wanting to pay some of the full premium prices that Dell have got these listed up on their website for. Now that's my thoughts on this Alienware M16. As always, I'd love to know what you guys think. Have you bought one of these? Would you consider buying one of these laptops? Or do you think there's a better alternative out there? As always, I'd love to know what you think. Put it in the comment section down below and I will get back to you. And lastly, thank you for watching.